Who is Golobulus, and what is Cobra-La or Pythona, and what's this about Cobra Commander being a lackey, and there's a secret ruler that forced the G.I. Joe team into existence? What's going on here? Today we're talking all about Golobulus. But before we do, I want to say thank you for watching JLS Comics. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe. I upload videos just like this every week. Okay, let's get back to the story. Golobulus is the ruler of Cobra-La. The people of Cobra-La developed biotechnology that they enhanced their bodies with, often completely replacing limbs and body parts with the enhanced ones, which are developed from living organisms. The person and the parts are meant to enhance each other symbiotically, making the sum better than each of those parts. For Golobulus, he too was once a man, but got so many parts of his body either enhanced or outright replaced that all that remains of his former self is his brain and his central nervous system. As his file card says, Golobulus has achieved immortality through symbiosis at the cost of his humanity. The Cobra-La race believes themselves to be superior to and better than Homo sapiens, which are currently the dominant planetary hominid living on the surface of Earth. Millennia ago, well, 40,000 years ago, Cobra-La and the Serpent Kings used to rule the planet's surface, dominating the entire planet, but they were driven underground. Some say it was the Ice Age, others say it was the Transformers Unicron that drove them below the surface, where they continue to live in a subsurface hidden part of the remote Himalayan mountains. At some point during this time, Golobulus rose to become the last ruler of Cobra-La, the last in a long line of Serpent Kings. Now underground, the age of post-Ice Age barbarians on the surface began, where these surface dwellers slowly developed technology from inorganic, lifeless substances. Then began the Copper and Bronze and Silver Ages, followed by the Age of Industrialization and the Age of Technology. This was a travesty to the people of Cobra-La, who long since fully encased themselves in their symbiotic relationships with their bio counterparts and their living technology. So they waited deep underground, surrounded by a dome of ice and snow for their opportunity. One time, as they continued to live, waiting for the right time to rise again, around the time that the Roman Emperor Hadrian was building his famed wall, there was an attempted coup on Golobulus's reign. 500 irate Cobra-La noblemen stormed into the inner sanctum of Golobulus's palace, and there, just 20 of Golobulus's elite royal guard confronted the rebelling noblemen. Only one of the royal guard was wounded, and they were so effective in quelling this uprising that Golobulus was able to sleep through the attempted coup. The royal guard slaughtered all 500 of the noblemen. It's said that the colonies of Cobra-La, not just their bodies, but their palaces and structures and dwellings, as are most of their bio-enhancements, made of crustaceans. Their armor and mutations and chitinous shells of things like crabs and lobsters. Although I'm not sure how many of those would be available in the Himalayan mountain range. However, it's likely they collected these prior to the Ice Age, when the continents and oceans were drawn vastly different to how the tectonic plates have shifted things around to where they are now. So they got the samples, and then they were grown with recombinant DNA technology, which wouldn't require constant collection of new samples. But it was from this palace in Cobra-La that Golobulus watched the machinations of their serpentine influence uncurl and unfurl in the modern age of surface men. Golobulus, as ruler, employs his agents like Nemesis Enforcer and Pythona to do his bidding, while the royal guard serve as his personal elite Praetorian guard. Fleeting glimpses of Nemesis Enforcer through history gave rise to stories of vampires and harpies and countless other things that go bump in the night. According to her 2016 file card, Pythona, the Cobra-La emissary, is the royal messenger of King Golobulus and the harbinger of destruction to all that encounter her. In Sunbow's animated series Season 2 opening event called Arise, Serpentor, Arise, Dr. Mindbender was frustrated with Cobra Commander's constant failings, so he set about to take DNA from many of history's most notorious and infamous rulers and despots, and which he used to create a new leader, a new being called Serpentor. Where Cobra Commander was the leader, Serpentor was now the emperor. And we thought at the time that that was all there was to his story, but there's more. Voiced by Batman's iconic Penguin actor Burgess Meredith, Golobulus was the main villain, the quote-unquote big bad, if you will, of 1987's G.I. Joe the movie, which added another layer to their Serpentor story. For the movie, Cobra Commander himself was also part of Cobra-La, deformed being from their race, hiding his true visage under a blue hood. He was a Cobra-La nobleman, a scientist actually, that was deformed while experimenting with mold spores. Golobulus had instructed Commander to go to the surface and build an army of loyal warriors. So he did, and he built up his Cobra terrorist organization, which would allow Golobulus and Cobra-La to emerge and retake the planet's surface. The G.I. Joe's General Hawk once said that this creation of Cobra at the direction of Golobulus, quote, forced the Joes into existence, end quote. However, Golobulus grew wary of Cobra Commander's constant failings, and by way of a psychic motivator is the one who influenced Dr. Mindbender to create a successor. Although Dr. Mindbender thought it was completely his idea, mind you, as it was in Arise Serpentor Arise. A replacement for Cobra Commander, and that replacement was Serpentor. So where Cobra Commander was the commander and surface leader, and Serpentor was the emperor, Golobulus was the king and supreme ruler. Golobulus sent out his assassin Pythona to infiltrate a Cobra terrordrome and make contact with Serpentor. She did, and told him that they needed the BET, not the music channel, but a broadcast energy transmitter. More on that in a moment. During this early part of the movie, Serpentor was captured by the G.I. Joe team and held in their custody, although overseen by a few careless Joes who'd let their guard down, but would redeem themselves later. After Cobra Commander was captured by Golobulus and forced to stand trial for his failings, Golobulus launched into his second, overly complicated plan. He had some quote-unquote magnificent fungozoids, which were to mature and launch hundreds of pods into space, right into orbit around Earth. The pods were then to be infused with energy from the BET, allowing them, in the coldness of space, to release spores which would devolve and mutate all surface life to a primitive state, thereby easily allowing him and Cobra-La to once again take over the Earth. At the end of the film, Golobulus seemingly succumbed to his own technology. In a fight with Lieutenant Falcon, he was stabbed in the eye with a time worm. Jinx and Sergeant Slaughter threw Nemesis Enforcer and Pythona down a chasm, while Falcon used the BET to burn away all the space spores, overload the BET itself, and destroy Cobra-La, burying it under a massive avalanche along with Golobulus himself. Did he survive? Who knows? Cobra Commander was shot in the back and left for dead, but he returned. Billy Kessler and Zartan had a volcano dropped on them, but they escaped. Duke survived a snake spear through the chest. Serpentor was revived by G.I. Joe, and Dr. Mindbender came back to life, and Dr. Venom lived on in a computer too, so if they can survive, I guess anything's possible. On Golobulus' Impel trading card, it says, he has not been seen or heard from since a massive earthquake sealed off the passageway to Cobra-La, and it's unclear whether or not the inhabitants perished in the quake. I guess what I'm saying is that it's impossible he did indeed survive. Desirable? No. Possible? Yes. In the ideas for the third Sunbow season, Cobra-La would have indeed made it out of the end of the film. It was written to be destroyed quickly, though, and replaced by Tomax and Zamon's organization called the Coil. Unfortunately, a company called Deke undercut Sunbow, and they lost the rights. Deke did this quite a bit, which effectively led to the downfall of animated syndication at the time. However, the story did spill over to the Deke series. For a moment, Serpentor was still in charge of Cobra, and the Cobra Commander was still in his snake form, but the Baroness subjected him to an ancient force called Dragonfire, hence Operation Dragonfire, to restore him from serpentine back to human. He then turned the Pythonization ray made from Dragonfire on Serpentor, transferring him in the opposite way, where he was fused with Nagahide's pet iguana. Kirk Bozigian, who worked at Hasbro under Bob Prupis and later became VP of Marketing, opined on the provenance of Cobra-La in an interview. He said that Hasbro had two creative partners. One was Larry Hama and Marvel Comics, with whom he'd often collaborate to ensure that the toys and commercials aligned with the comic books from both a design and a timing perspective. The other was Marvel Productions, which was a part of Sunbow Animation, makers, of course, of the much-beloved animated series before Deke took over. Sunbow was part of a massive global advertising agency named Griffin Bacall, which was headed at the time by Joe Bacall. And according to Bozigian, Joe Bacall was a sci-fi fanatic, and it was he who said that they couldn't do an animated film for kids about war or about terrorism. So sci-fi it was. And down the line, people were not really happy about their new sci-fi inspired directive, but they went with it. Not only that, but there was now a mandate from Hasbro for this character called Serpentor to be used. Animated series writer Buzz Dixon said he had suddenly had to come up with ideas to shoehorn Serpentor into the tale. So he came up with two ideas. One was to have Dr. Mindbender create Serpentor from some of the greatest minds in history, and the other was to create a secret empire, pulling the strings behind Cobra. Larry Hama said in a different interview that he was forced to kill off Cobra Commander to match up with the movie, which, thinking it an entirely stupid idea, nearly got him to quit altogether. And so, in 1987's A Real American Hero issue 61, Hama had Fred 7 shoot Cobra Commander in the back, leaving him for dead, where he took his place in a mechanical suit, his battle armor, for a period of time. Hama did actually use Serpentor quite a bit in the comic book series, and For Serpentor's comic book history, check out my video on him, links right here. Hama also said that he was so pissed off about this idea that he refused to watch any of the animated stuff. He had in his mind to bring Cobra Commander back as soon as possible, and he did about 40 issues later. Golobulus, Pythona, Nemesis Enforcer, and Cobra-La never made it into his stories. In a letters page for ARAH issue 100, Hama addressed this. Once upon a time, he says, there were TV commercials for G.I. Joe comics. They were generated by an ad agency, which was Griffin McCall, at the clip of 4 per year. Whatever was shown in the commercial had to be in the comic. I got stuck with Serpentor, Tomac, Zaymot, and a host of silly characters. I did my best to make them work because it was a matter of my doing my job. If you have a squad of losers, you still have to go out on patrol. I drew the line at Cobra-La and a few others. There are not plans for future commercials." End quote. They were, however, part of Tim Seeley's G.I. Joe Transformers for Devil's Due. Larry's counterpart, animated series writer Buzz Dixon, felt the same way about Hasbro's influence, even though he and Hama didn't really interact. Dixon says he's never seen a Deke episode. Buzz took Ron Friedman's original script and reworked it, then submitted his new script treatment draft to Sunbow, New York for the film. Ron Friedman, who wrote the original, created Nemesis Enforcer, which was the only thing to remain after Dixon took over, and it was Dixon who then created the Lovecraftian At the Mountains of Madness treatment that became the film. Dixon's new script is the one that included the name Cobra-La. The name was intended to be a placeholder in order to draw the parallel for those in the C-suite to Shangri-La, but it stuck. He had previously submitted King Cobra as an early name for Serpentor, but they caught on that it was the name of a malt liquor already, so they changed it. And he was sure in this same light that they'd make the Shangri-La and Cobra-La connection as well, but they didn't. In one interview, Dixon called it derivative and stupid. He once said if he'd suspected that they would love the name Cobra-La, he would have called it Granny's Body House. Buzz Dixon also created Pythona and Golobulus, and about his creation Golobulus, Dixon said, originally, he was supposed to be a very rotund, seemingly effete human patterned after Charles Lawton as Nero, borne about everywhere in a litter by acolytes and fed grapes and other snacks by them. In the end, when Sergeant Slaughter confronts him, he would have signed and said, "Well, I suppose I must deign to fight you," and then suddenly launch into a series of blistering, fast and powerful martial arts moves, completely belying the impression he created. Hasbro thought that it was too effete and changed him to what he was in the film. As far as action figures, there weren't that many figures made for this line. Pythona didn't get a figure until the 2016 release. The 1987 3-pack called the Cobra-La Team that did follow the film was that of Golobulus, Nemesis Enforcer, and Royal Guard. Ron Rudat designed the action figures for the set. Early concept art for a Pythona figure, though, put her in gold with a giant flowing cape and a staff, very much the look of a Cobra Empress, and would have fit perfectly in the royal court of none other than Serpentor. Her later look was one much more muted, with a design and palette that made her look like the sister of Assassin Aurra Sing from Star Wars. Speaking of unmade toys, one interesting note is about the driver of the Iron Grenadier's anti-gravity pod, the AGP. His name is Nullifier, and Nullifier was intended to be the driver of the Insecticycle, a Cobra-La motorcycle to be released during the movie's run, but which was never produced. As a result, since the figure and the mold were already made, Nullifier moved over to Destro's Iron Grenadier's sub-team to drive the AGP instead. So that's why when you look at him, he has a distinctly crustacean insectoid-like appearance. And now we find ourselves at the end of the tale as another story draws to a close. Oh, one more thing. And with that, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this each and every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.